It doesn't matter where you are. If you
Mhm.
don't find fulfillment in what you want to do in life,
Yes.
you'll never be happy. You can be in Canada, you can be in England, you can be United States of America, you can be in Germany. It doesn't matter what
Mhm.
you're doing until you find the niche about your life.
Hello and welcome to the podcast, Mr. David Yohane. Mr. Yohane is currently based in Ontario, Canada. I've known David, I think, for over a decade. He's my mentor, business partner, and he's a man of many talents. And he currently runs a thriving business in Canada, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about that. So in the conversation today, in addition to, sharing his story, David is also going to share some entrepreneurial experience and life experiences as he has, been going through this life. Please help me welcome Mr. David Yohane, chairman, as I like to call him, because he's the board chair for the organization, nonprofit that we worked on together. Welcome, Mr. Yohane.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you for having me. I know it's taken us a while to get here,
Yes.
just because of busy schedules and life as we know it. But I'm
Yes.
I'm I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So let's get right to it. Mr. Yohane, I knew you through a friend who has departed, Dr. Patson Zamara, may so rest in peace. When I was coming to
Yes.
Canada, he said, "Oh, I know someone who is actually based in Canada, is running his own business, but he's most importantly is a wonderful person." So when I landed to Canada, David was one of those people that I, you know, contacted to say, hey, I got your contacts from this friend. And
Yep.
ever since, he has become someone, I value, his views. He's very frank, and I'm going to ask him more about his journey. Mr. Yohane, do you care to tell us about your story? I understand you were born in Zimbabwe and currently based in Zimbabwe, in Canada.
Yes. Wow. This is for the benefit of the recording. We try to make it short as possible. Yes, I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. My dad is from Malawi. My mom is Zimbabwean, so I speak about four languages.
Mhm.
And I was raised in a very humble settings. I have seven siblings, and
Mhm.
so you had to work hard, fight or flight kind of situation. And so at a very early age stage in my life, my dad and my parents had to supplement their income. So my dad had extra work, my mom had extra work. And so I found myself working with my mom at the market,
Mhm.
selling vegetables, eggs, and all sorts of things. So I did all that. And then as a young person, you always wonder why? Why is this happening to me, right? And so
Mhm.
anyway, fast forward, at a very young age, I started selling popcorns in school. I started
That was in
so
Zimbabwe, right?
that's in Zimbabwe. Yeah, this is when I was young.
Mhm.
And then, but I was also playful in the sense that I didn't commit to my studies.
Mhm.
So when he came to writing my O levels, I didn't meet the requirement, so I failed. And then
Mhm.
that took me. My brother at that point was now managing a farm, and then he said to me, "If you want money for Christmas, you can come over here. You can work at the farm." And so I was like, "Hey, I need money for Christmas." So I went there. To my surprise, he found a job for me to work as a farmer.
Mhm.
I thought I was going to work in the farm office, but I ended up with a big hole, and I find myself in a farm field, and I was crying. So
Mhm.
I did that, and that's when it sort of hit me to say, life is what you're making.
Mhm.
Life is about making decision, or if you don't make decision, somebody else is going to make decisions for you. It doesn't matter what it is. And so
Yes.
that's what hit me. So I was humbled sort of back to the threshing floor.
Mhm.
And so I had to work on a farm. I had to send myself back to school, and I've never stopped learning since then
Mhm. Wonderful.
because I realized that's what life is all about. And then so many years later, working in Zim and other things happened there, but I left Zim and came to Canada.
Wonderful. I
Uh,
know when, thank you so much, David, for sharing that. Now,
Yeah.
do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you do for work, like your business? Because I know you employ people, and I've learned quite a lot from you about how to run and to start a business. And can you tell us about what you do as Steamwise Cleaning?
Yes. So before I go into that, I just want to highlight that
Hmm.
it doesn't matter where you are. If you
Hmm.
don't find fulfillment in what you want to do in life,
Yes.
you'll never be happy. You can be in Canada, you can be in England, you can be United States of America, you can be in Germany. It doesn't matter what you're
Hmm.
doing until you find the niche about your life. So I was in Canada,
Hmm.
but I had this background and I lived in UK before I came here as well. But
Hmm.
I wasn't satisfied with what I was doing. I was working for everybody else, and actually I got laid off. And one day I went to a place and somebody asked me, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to work for myself."
Hmm.
And they said, but I had no idea what I was talking about. So they said, "Well,
Hmm.
go to this place." So I went to this place, and so I'm going to jump a little bit to say I have a small cleaning business,
Hmm.
and we have stuff we clean, any kind of cleaning that you think of, commercial, residential, but we're dealing with the main kind of cleaning at the high end level. That's
Hmm.
what I'll say for now. I'm sure Isaac will share my website.
For sure.
um, but yeah, but I didn't know what to do. But at that point, I was working for another company, and I had to go again to school. Remember, I said I haven't stopped learning.
Yes.
There was training they were offering for people to start their business, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I took some training, and I met people there, and that changed my life. And so, coming from Africa, we don't understand how things work.
Mhm.
We think the most things
In
that we see is
in a
somebody has
new
a
system.
product.
Sorry to interject. In a new system, right? I get this, sorry to kind of probe because the systems in Africa are different. And then
Yes,
what you did, and you explain, elaborate further on that, is that when you came here, you
yeah,
accepted that, you had a lot to learn. So you therefore
yes,
went to school and started to learn in a new system. That is key there. I think you can go
yes.
ahead, Mr. Johan.
So what happens? The first thing I learned when I went to school, there are things called 7 habits of successful people. So I
Hmm.
wanted to be successful. I wanted to work for myself. So the
Hmm.
first thing was you need to understand your why. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, why are you doing what you do? You need to understand why do you want to work for yourself? Why do you need money? Why do you do what you do? Why do you buy this car? Why do you drive this kind of car? Why do you, right? You need to understand that. And you should always start with your end. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do
Hmm.
you see yourself in retirement? We're going to talk about finances in a second. And then you got to commit to that. And then there's two: relationship building, networking. And then you got to control what you know. And then you got to seek to understand first.
So can you please repeat this point because it's very, very interesting that you started asking why?
Yes. So I know I wanted to work for myself, but I didn't know why.
Yes.
And so I had to go to education to understand how business works because coming from an African background, not that there's nothing wrong with being
Mm-hmm.
African, but
Mm-hmm.
every place that you are in, there are different systems there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like I mentioned earlier on, I watched my parents having a small business. They were selling
Mm-hmm.
things on the market. In Canada, you can't just sell things on the market. In Canada, you can't just show up at somebody's house and say, "Hey, I'm selling eggs." You can't do all that. So I needed to understand how do things work here in Canada, business-wise. So I had to go to education. So part of that training was, what's your vision?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do? Where do you see yourself? What is your company? What's the name of your company? I didn't have all this information. What's your commitment? What do you want to do? Why are you, what will set you different from somebody else? Okay. So I learned all this and then I graduated, so to speak, and I started my business. And but I didn't start with stuff. It was just me,
Mm-hmm.
and it was hard. It was difficult. It also was a learning process. So now you've done the education, then now what? Where do you start?
The
And then
real
that's
work
when the network,
starts.
yes, then the networking starts because the only person who had from God was Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else learns from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is either what you're reading, it's either somebody else have already done it. Nobody's gonna invent a new thing. And so we need to discipline ourselves to come under the sitting of somebody else, which means your ego gotta be in check. You gotta check your ego, which means you gotta be able actually to listen to what other people, and you actually need to acknowledge other people who are successful or other people who know more about you. Because part of running business, and especially now I'm gonna jump in a little bit to finances, there are people who are trained who know how money works. Not everybody knows how money works. So if you want to be success, a lot of times is measured by how much money you have. If you want to look at celebrities, they have shows about showing the celebrities' houses. And well, I don't like to look at that. I like to look at their journey.
Yes.
How did they start? How did they get here? Right? And then and see what I can learn from that. And so finances, to be honest with you, I'm glad that you are doing this because we need people who are dedicating their time to help people who don't have time for this. So one of the things that I did when I came to Canada, I took a course on finances with Primerica.
Thank you for tuning in to this podcast. Only 31% of the people who tune in to watch this podcast, they are subscribed. So I want to encourage you to please subscribe so that this content can reach far and wide. Thank you again, and may the markets be with you. Let me specifically ask you, so personal finance for me, that's what I do. I coach people, but the thing is, a lot of people who come to me is like, they come to me to say, oh, Isaac, I want, what stocks should I buy? But I am not an investment advisor. Therefore, I don't I don't, tell people where to invest their money. But what I do is I teach people to understand how to budget, how to invest in the stock market, right? So tell me, I know you are now at a phase in your life where, your finances are at a point where you are comfortable enough, so to say, but how did you get to that point? Where did you do it on your own, like your finances, or you had to consult someone?
No, because from my background, Africa finances is not something that we are good at.
Generally,
we like to spend. We like to show people how much we have, either through our dressing, through the cars that we drive, all that issue. I'm not going to get into it. But what I realized quickly when I came after maybe many years in Canada, is realizing how money works. And at that point, I'd done some training with Primerica. So we had to engage somebody who's specified in this, because what they do is, again, understanding your why and understanding where you want to be in 10 or 20 years. For your own information, I'm retiring next year. I want to retire at 50. So I say this when I was young. And then so this person would say, oh, okay, let's look at this. How much are you going to need? And then they look at your lifestyle. They look at everything that you want to do. Then they can come back to you and say, well, this is what you need to do. This is how disciplined you need to be. They crack the numbers. They know what's happening. And then so you have to trust. Again, remember I said, we don't know it all. You have to come to a point where you trust a person. We had young kids at that point. Our daughter just graduated last month.
Oh,
and I was starting studying university in the fall, right? And all those things had to be planned and budgeted for. And that doesn't come from average salary. So you have to plan and you have to engage people who know what we're talking about. And also, you need to find your spot in life. I do a cleaning business. I don't know about stock. So I have to go and trust a person who knows about. So it's about relationship building with this person. It doesn't matter what area. Same in my business. I have an accountant.
Yes.
I have to trust him to do that part, because that's not my focus.
Even though you ask questions.
If I do ask questions, how does this work? Or this work? So I have a general idea how things work, but that's not what I want to do. So I get people who are professional in those expertise, and they do what they do. And I do my expertise, which is running my business. And this is how we've gotten this far, so to speak. We are in year 13 now, running my business. And so we've done okay. So that's what I would say. Like, you have to commit to your vision. Where do you want to be? I think the problem is Africans, we have a lot of issues with trust. I'm gonna say this right out.
Yeah. Some people, right? I just want to be specific, right? Yeah.
No.
Mhm.
See, for the most part, look at our lifestyle.
Mhm.
We would rather keep the money under the mattress than giving it to somebody who say, "Hey, give me this money."
But why is
And
why is that so, David? I say that, to push back because the thing is like, I would give an example. For example, in Zimbabwe,
yeah,
right? Generally,
yeah,
it's because a lot of people have lost the savings and stuff. There's something that has happened in the past that can, force people to that. I was reading a book in psychology, and one thing it says is that generally people remember the worst experiences they have had compared to the
right,
good experiences. So think of this. So there's a reason to that. But if you look at the financial system in Canada, even when there was a financial crisis in the US, the Canadian financial sector was resilient because it's well regulated. So I just wanted to
right,
put context to say, if you go to South Africa, it's a different case because I think they have a much better, financial system, that is well
yeah.
developed. So there's a reason for that, but you bring in a very good point there, David.
Well, right now, if you want to look, Isaac, there's a lot of people who have migrated. We have over 3 million people
Mhm.
who are in diaspora Zimbabweans right now.
Yes.
And but if we had to question how many of those people are investing in the country of they're residing in, everybody, as much as Zimbabwe has ruined us, we're still investing back there. You still want to buy a stand back in home. You still want to put money back in the same system that you know. But instead of saying, that would be my suggestion. If you
Mhm.
invest in the systems that are established, Canada, States, UK, wherever you are, and
Mhm.
then when you work with professionals, you can take the dividends or the profits,
Mhm.
now invest those back home,
Mhm.
right? And your foundation is still laid, right? I understand Zimbabweans, we love going home, or African and such. But my point is we are not learning. We are not learning where we are. We are not learning the system. We are not learning how we can improve ourselves. And therefore we seem to be stuck in a circle.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of learning, like you have highlighted. But I will say, I will push back a little bit there, David, to say, some people, they are actually, running some businesses in Zimbabwe whilst living abroad successfully. I
Yeah,
was watching this young man who is doing, I say young man with respect, of course.
yeah,
He is showing, like success stories of people who left Australia, somewhere in in other parts of the world, in the diaspora, who are running projects, mostly in agricultural sector, right? But
right.
they have systems that work, right? But there are also
Yeah,
a lot of horror stories of people who have lost millions of money, sending back home, and then they think, oh, now it's time to retire. My house is already, well built. They go
yeah,
there, there's nothing, right? So I
yeah,
think you bring
yeah,
in a very good point. And for me, that's my approach to say, home is
yeah,
where I sleep most of my days in a year. If I look at it,
yeah,
I live in Canada pretty much, right? So
yeah,
I want to be comfortable here. And then if I am successful in my investments in the stock market or whatever area of
yeah,
my specialization, I can then kind
yeah.
of diversify those investments, in other
Yes,
parts of the
yes,
world. And I'm not necessarily saying because I was born in Zimbabwe, I'm going to only look at opportunities in Zimbabwe, right? There are a lot
yeah,
of other parts of Africa and other parts of the world, but it's important to have a competitive advantage, in that regard.
yes,
So you bring in a
yeah.
very good point because there are a lot of people who lose money. So I think that's a good point. David, I'm curious, what are the life lessons that you have learned throughout your career? Because, you have worked, at some point you were fired, I guess, and then you started your own business. Now you have this, I know you are very decent. I came there and I worked with you and I was mostly learning from you, and you have employees, you have, quite a thriving business. So tell me about, is there a secret to success in your success?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Failure, failure.
Okay.
You will always fail. So when we fail, sometimes we give up.
Hmm.
Okay. The secret is don't give up. Do not give up, because if you know, remember the seven habits. A habit is something that you keep doing over and over and over again. And so when you fail, you need to get up and try again. Secondly, you surround yourself with people that don't waste your time. Okay. And then the third thing is you need to listen. You need to listen to. I remember one advice that one person gave me. I actually met them a couple of weeks ago when I started my business because the phone wasn't ringing. I actually had to call my phone at one time to make sure the phone wasn't cut off. Right? I remember those times because people didn't know me. I wasn't networking, and so and he said to me, "Young man, if you can keep your head up when things are tough, you're going to be fine." That's all that says. A lot of times we measure success in our own terms. In terms of you want to start something today, in 3 months you want it to be a success. Life is a process. Life
very important.
Life is a process. There are things we can control and there are things we can't control. But when you fail, don't make that to be a title. Don't make that to be your middle name, David Failure Yohane. No, we learn every day. We learn every day, and then so humility. Also, you testify. Humility. It's one of the things I aspire to. Humility. It doesn't mean you're not confident. Sometimes people. That they mistake those two. But humility is just understanding how things work, understanding when to ask for help, and understanding where to want time for yourself, understanding when to say no, understanding when to say yes. And that's humility. So those are the things that I've learned in life. I've learned to say no to certain things. I've learned to say yes to certain things. I've learned to say, I don't know.
Yes.
I've learned to say, can you please teach me? I've learned to say, can you show me how it works? That's what I think is the recipe to success, because there are people there. I mean, if I had time, I would share stories. I remember one time I wanted to go. So what I did when I started my business, I casted things that I wanted to do in years to come. We started by cleaning carpets, but I wanted to do restaurants cleaning. I wanted to do tile cleaning, and I didn't have the equipment. And then one time, there's one course that I needed to do because you have to be government certified to do like what we do with the restaurants. So I needed to go to United States, and that course needed about $10,000 or $15,000, and I didn't have it. And so for 2 years, I waited for this moment. And I went to a networking meeting, and somebody says, "Hey, what's going on? What do you need?" I was like, "What?"
You ask.
So I asked. I was like, "Well, right now I need about $10,000 to go to the States. I want to do that course." And we were joking, and somebody gave me $10,000 because I asked.
Yeah, you know why I'm laughing? I'm reading a book. This book actually, it emphasizes, like $1 Million Weekend. It emphasizes to say you should have a mindset to receive. You should ask, follow up. And sorry to interject, David. And one thing that, I've also learned is that I have been reaching out to people to come to this podcast, and the response, I must say, has been very overwhelmingly positive. But at some point, I remember I was like, oh, if I reach out, it's a big name. Is this person going to come to say yes? So I've learned to ask. But even if someone says no, that's okay, right? I will learn from that failure because at least I have asked. So I'm really impressed that you then got that, opportunity to further your education. I was going to ask you, after that training, so you then saw the value of, that, certification. But also, I keep on hearing this idea that you are a good network. I know when I came, I visit you regularly in Ontario. And, you take me around to these networking opportunities. I remember, we went, to one of the networking meetings, the breakfast meeting, and we were learning, more importantly, just building relationships. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Because I knew you because of a networking opportunity, from Dr. Samara May. So rest in peace. And that's the power of networking, right? Now we have become very, buddies. So do you want to speak a little bit more to that?
So you took 12 people. told them everything, and then he went. And so Jesus is a business person who knows how to market. Yeah, so when in every community there's what they call the Chamber of Commerce. It's they try to put a business directory for business to networking. And again, I didn't know what this was, and so I went. And then out of that, we're able to hear, oh, there's another networking group here, and I didn't know what was networking was. So, to my surprise, when I got there, everybody had a minute to share about your business.
Yes.
And so you are to learn to summarize what you do in minutes. It's in 1 minute. It's called an elevator speech.
Yes.
And so as you do that, you're also learning to things that are important, things that stand out about your business that you want to focus on, not to tell the whole story. And so I think I did networking every Wednesday for like 3 years. With that's the one that we went to together.
Yes.
And then from there you meet this person who does this, or this one is an accountant, or this one does this, or this one. And then you again, it's more like a classroom that is full of teachers. You know, and everybody's sharing about their expertise, and then you'll be just like, wow. And then as I said, we don't stop learning, and you're just like, oh. Then from there were now resources that were available right away to say, hey, can I meet with you? Can you share a little bit more about your business, what you do? My accountant, I met him at a networking event, and then so you can't do it all by yourself. There's somebody who does something better than you, and the goal is to find out who does this better than me, who does investing better than me, who does sales better than me, who does accounting better than me. And then you get to learn from that person. If you want to learn from, I'm a Christian, so we'll talk a little bit about Jesus here. Jesus needed to serve the whole world, but he says, I need 12 people. So he took 12 people, he told them everything, and then he went. And so Jesus is a business person who knows how to market and who knows how to grow his business. And so if you want your business to grow, you got to work with other people, and you got to trust them. You got to believe them. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to you. So that's the power of networking there. Like, just like sharing about, we were able to travel to come and meet you where you stay. Yes. We spent the night, but it came from networking, right? Yes. Because you get to that place where you get along, you know a little bit about each other, and then you build trust. And without trust, you can't do anything. You can't.
Yeah, and I will say this, David, that you just mentioned this, something that is powerful. Right now, I can, drive, whether in the States or any part of the world. I remember my first experience. David was the first person who allowed me to sit in a car. That was, I think, some years here when I was in Canada, even when I came in Canada, because I didn't know how to drive a car. So he was like, young man, get in there.
Sit here.
Sit here, right? This is the gear. This is what you do. This is what you do, right? And I moved a little bit, a few inches. And after that,
in a parking lot.
In a parking lot, right? And, ever since, I then, I did my driving. I share this because it's never too late, right? I remember when I drove to Oregon, that was a 7-hour drive. I didn't know, I just needed a GPS to travel from Canada to that part of the world. So it's never too late, to learn something. And I just gave you another example of something that really inspired me. David, you must have had a point where you failed and then you shifted your mindset. Do you have one point where you felt like, well, I'm about to give up, and then something happened? Do you want to share a moment like that? Yeah, throughout your business and your career.
Business.
Like, was there a point where you felt like,
no, not business wise, but personally, I would say, okay, so left Zimbabwe in Canada, and this is like maybe 7, 8 years or 10 years in Canada. And but I was here, but my mind wasn't here. My mindset wasn't in Canada. I hadn't understood my why. I hadn't grasped my what I was doing here. So to a point where I actually left Canada and I wanted to go back to Africa. So I actually went. I actually quit my job and I told the family, I'm like, yeah, I'm going back.
I'm
So
going back.
I'm going back. No
I,
plans.
with respect, I was a chief, so I'm going to go back and go back and
Yeah,
continue to
yeah.
to be with my people. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because like if you like again, we were talking about the power of understanding your why, right? If you don't understand why you are where you are and what you would abuse whatever you have. It doesn't matter what it is.
Mhm.
And so that's what happened to me. I didn't understand where my life was going at that point, and I was just frustrated, and I left. And so I left, went back home. I have a photo that I usually share with friends
Mhm.
that you leave a cozy house and
Mhm.
whatever,
Mhm.
and then you go to cook on a fire where there's no shortage of water, there's no
Mhm.
electricity, and I had a Canadian passport in my
Mhm.
pocket.
Mhm.
And I didn't see one day my sister's like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?"
Mhm.
That's when I started understanding my why.
Mhm.
And so when I came back, it was after a year that I actually started my business. And so
Mhm.
that shifted my thinking,
Mhm.
and you could be surrounded by resources, but if you don't have a plan and a vision of where you want to be and what's happening in your life, you would abuse whatever it is.
Yes.
Relationships, money,
Mhm.
you will abuse those things because you are not understanding the purpose. You
Mhm.
don't have a vision. You don't understand your why.
Mhm.
And so you are not success. Success to me, it simply means understanding what you're doing.
That's interesting. So, you raised very interesting points there. I know here I am based off in, Surrey, British Columbia. There's the Surrey Board of Trade, the power of networking. There's also, so there are a lot of other resources that are around, but sometimes you have to look for those resources. I say that because you also mentioned that you had to invest money for your kids as well. I know in Canada there is what is called the registered education savings account. Those are some of the things that people can also take advantage of. I say that
Yeah.
because even in Zimbabwe, I when I started learning about investing, I realized like there are also those accounts there. But the fact that for me, I didn't do it, I didn't know about them, I had
Yeah.
no idea. So in every part of the world, I think it's very important to understand these things, even if you're a business person, even if you're in school, to have a community and network so that you can also
Yeah.
learn from other people and do so
Yeah.
intentionally. David, is
Yeah.
there anything else that you want to share with, I know you and I, we can talk and talk, but is there something that you can, say, I wanna share this as a parting shot?
Well, just to be encouraging you you have the passion to reach out to people.
Thank you.
And so don't give up. Don't we have talked. I remember the first time that we met when you come to my house, you were wearing your jacket, you had a Zimbabwean flag on it.
Yes, 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 I remember.
And you're very passionate about helping people, and at the end of the day, maybe work back home and restoring our country
Yes.
to a better place, and things like that. I'm aware we've tried to do things ourselves. So it's again just to encourage even to those who are listening to say, you know what, if they have a minute to listen,
Hmm.
if they have a minute to consider,
Hmm.
if they have a minute to just say, let's try this.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's worth just try it. Just try it.
Yes.
Just
Hmm.
listen to what the young man is saying. Just try and see because you never know the opportunity that will change your life.
Hmm.
You never know the opportunity that will change your life. And you said our relationship started by somebody else who's not
Yes.
here, who
Yes.
said, "Hey guys, you may see if you guys get along." And so we
Yes.
did. And
Yes.
here we are many years later, right? And so that's what life is all about. You meet people, you connect, and who knows what happens later. And so just to encourage you, keep doing what you're doing. And for those who are listening,
Thank you,
if you
David.
have a minute to listen, please do. So
Okay. Thank you so much, David,
yeah.
for your time. I think with that, I just wanted to say thank you to the audience for tuning in. And hopefully, you enjoyed this podcast. And stay tuned for the other upcoming podcasts. Have a wonderful day and may the markets be with you.